Yep. Welcome to the pod.
Welcome to the pod.
Nice to see you on the mic.
Yes. My invisible mic compared to your real mic.
There's no mic. It's just John and Caleb. All right. What is stopping you from taking the first step towards your dreams? Today we're diving in to why the first step, while daunting, opens up everything that follows. It's 1325 and you're a young scholar named Ibn Battuta, just 21 years old, living in the Moroccan city of Tangier. Life is safe and familiar, but something inside you stirs. A pull towards the unknown, a desire to see more than the streets and people you've always known. You feel called to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, a journey over 3,000 miles away. Now, in Battuta's time, most people live their whole lives close to home, but he was driven by curiosity and faith. So with little more than his basic belongings, he made the bold decision to begin. One single step forward and he was on his way. Little did he know this would lead to an adventure beyond anything he or anyone else could have imagined. His original plan was to travel to Mecca, but as he continued, he grew curious about lands and people beyond the next horizon. He didn't just pass through these places, he immersed himself in their culture, studying their languages, learning their customs, and recording their wisdom. Over the next 29 years, Ibn Battuta journeyed over 75,000 miles across North Africa, the Middle East, Persia, India, China, and even parts of Eastern Europe and sub-Saharan Africa. He encountered countless societies, from the bustling ports of the Indian Oceans to the grand courts of India and the vast cities in China. He marveled at the bustling marketplaces in Cairo, where traders from Africa, Asia, and Europe mingled, exchanging goods, languages, and ideas. In India, he served as a judge at the courts of the Sultan of Delhi, gaining the trust and favor of leaders and learning the intricacies of their legal systems. Everywhere he went, he documented the landscapes, the architecture, the traditions, and the lives of people. His writings became one of the richest accounts of the medieval world, offering insights into diverse cultures, belief systems, and ways of life, many of which would have been lost to history. Ibn Battuta's journey didn't just enrich his life, it created a bridge between civilizations. His accounts connected the East and West, inspiring curiosity and exchange. He brought back knowledge of far-off lands, describing practices, governance, and inventions that expanded the worldview of people at home. His journey became a legacy, inspiring generations to explore, understand, and learn from other cultures. And all of this happened because he made that initial decision to step beyond what he knew, trusting that each step would reveal the path forward. So ask yourself, what might open up for you if you make the decision to begin? What dreams could unfold if you just take that first step, even with no map and no guarantees? Remember, sometimes it's the courage to begin that leads to an unimaginable future.
My guy, Ivan Battuta. Because of the salt in the
Jump
belly.
cut, salt in the deli, because he's been a dude. That's not fun. I wonder if there's something. His name is significantly longer than that, and I can't pronounce it.
It's longer than Ivan Battuta?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of words. I'm not even going to try it.
I'd like to see you try it.
All right. So one thing I know about people is people have big dreams. So many people have things that they want to do. I have things that I want to do. You have things that you want to do, and a life you want to live. And I think the reality is that very few people actually get to live that life that they're trying to live and do that thing they want to do. I think it's just a big thing for people is not jumping off.
Right. There's always some inherent risk involved in doing the thing that you dream about doing but are not currently doing, right? I think often it's an interesting dynamic because we have dreams and sometimes we end up living them. And sometimes in the hustle and bustle of life, we let dreams just fall off, right?
Backburnered forever.
Yeah, for sure. And we forget that we even had them. We are not forgetting.
We're not forgetting. We're doing it. We're jumping. And that's the kind of people we want to be. So some of this is going to be about practical what you need to do. You do need to take steps, but part of it is reframing yourself as the kind of person that does that. And, I want to be the kind of person that doesn't think about a bunch of stuff, but I want to be involved in it. I want to do it. I want to get my hands in it, and it's the only way to learn. And we talk about the first, practical step, insight that we want to kind of offer today. The first one is just embrace not knowing. And so there's this, what they call paralysis by analysis, whatever, but it's this feeling that there's so much more to learn that that I'll never know enough to get started. And I just want to say it's okay to not have everything figured out. If the journey's predictable, it's kind of boring. And I think that what anybody will tell you that does stuff is that all the stuff you practice ahead of time and all the stuff you learn ahead of time doesn't always translate long term. And like by the time you get to the thing you were preparing for, it's significantly different. I don't think it was Lao Tzu, but it was somebody. No battle plan survives the first engagement. Meaning, and you see this in like football, basketball, those would be the ones that I'm more familiar with, that people come up with a game plan, and then like the best coaches are the ones who can
Fastest adjustments.
Make the fastest and the best adjustments. So the big journey, the big dream isn't on the other side of like a perfect plan. It's on the other side of like action.
Yeah. I think, like you alluded to, we always run into gaps of knowledge. And I think if we can start seeing a knowledge gap as an opportunity to either learn something new or meet somebody new who knows and has the information we need, then we're not going to go, this is really hard to get to the airport, so I just won't go on the trip, right? Or I just won't go on the journey.
Totally.
I don't know how to drive a car. Well, good news, I can either learn how to drive one or I can hire someone to drive me there to go on this journey, right? And so I think knowledge gaps aren't ends. Well, I don't have the knowledge, or I don't have the skills, or I don't have X, Y, and Z. I think if we start putting a yet on the back of those phrases,
huge,
we can start moving in the right direction. I don't have the knowledge yet. Who can I get connected to, or what can I learn so that I can have the knowledge and take the next step?
Yeah, love that yet. That's a big deal. I think a lot of times we just start to think of ourselves as like not changing.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been this way, so I'll always be this way. I've never really known much about computers, or I've never done any kind of marketing, or I've never done any podcasting. I've never done any. But the difference between people who have done those things and people who haven't is that some people have done them. And the idea that it's good first is never, whatever. Mr. Beast says, if you're going to start a YouTube channel, make 100 videos, post them, and then you can start worrying about changing them. You just don't know enough about the process and how it all goes until you actually start to do it. So instead of so his advice in that, and we should listen to him, is like, rather than trying to figure out how to make the first video perfect, he's like, learn how to make videos, and then the advice has something to sit in. All of this learning we do on the front end is theoretical. It's not grounded in anything. So it's not worth anything until it's put into actual living context.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say to those of us who learning is a big deal, and that's me, that's one of my biggest things, is I just love to learn, but learning without the context is a big problem, because it's just all theoretical. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any weight to it because you haven't figured out where to put it and how to build it in there.
Learning to action, right? I do think that if the yet is a really important principle for us, then maybe the mascot should be a Yeti. Just like make a Yeti.
Yet I.
This is bad.
I'm not going to do it. I'll do it, but I won't leave it in the episode. There's a comedian the other day goes, I saw a guy the other day with a hat on that said, I'm an alcoholic. I like drinking outdoors and I want everybody to know it. It didn't say all that. It just said Yeti, but
sponsored by Yeti.
I read between the lines. Send a cooler. All right. So step 1, embrace not knowing.
Uh-huh.
Insight number 1. Second insight here is take small steps. So identify a single manageable action today. So for me, traveling 75,000 miles isn't going to take 29 years, but I'm also not going to see everything that Ibn Battuta saw. So he couldn't fly. He had to go slow. And I will say that in business, you can't really fly. You have to go slow. And so, or life, any real change that you're trying to make, any big jump you're trying to take, I think small steps are always better than big steps, because you're going to make missteps. So if you make a single manageable action today, you can see if it's an issue. But we do this in our public discourse. We're trying to we need these big, massive changes. And I'm just not a big proponent of big, massive changes. One, I think they're harder to take. And 2, you don't understand all the downstream effects of them. So I'm a big proponent of let's do small things. Let's take small steps and see how they affect things, and then continue to move forward. So not only is it much more manageable to do, but it's wiser in the long term, because you can course correct and keep yourself in the right direction better. So I love taking small steps. And so what are the small steps that you can take today?
It's the what about
Baby steps.
baby steps
Baby
around the
steps.
office,
Baby steps down the hall.
baby steps in the elevator. Boom.
Taking baby steps.
Yeah, but it's the incremental steps. I think that's a really good point you bring up. That what did you say? You said small steps are better than big steps often because we misstep. It's like
Yeah, we're gonna misstep.
yeah, and I think especially when we're talking about our businesses or which tend to be the vehicles towards our dreams, right? For many people, probably mostly for our audience here, that if we knew exactly what was going to come from every step we were going to take, like one, we'd be wizards,
Yeah, you'd
right?
be insanely wealthy very fast.
Yeah, totally. And so let's just level set. We're not that. We're not there.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think knowing that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to make missteps, and we're going to have to course correct often. What is just the next step, right? I think we often get so focused on I'm here, my goal is here, my dream is here. How can I get to here in as little steps as possible?
Like how many big steps can I take? Yeah.
Rather than I recognize that this is here, or it might be here, or it might be way off there, my dream. I don't actually know what it's going to take to get there. So I'm here, I'll recognize that. I'm just gonna take the next step. And what is the next step? And I think often we get paralyzed by how many steps there might be rather than just by saying, take the next step.
Yeah, and there's a shadow of small steps that makes it like intimidating for some to say, well, it doesn't seem like I'm making progress.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I put this little wall behind me of little plants that were just cutoffs and seedlings back here. And so every day they look like they did the day before, but they've been up there for a couple months and some of them are ready to be put into a plot. And it just reminds me, the greenery reminds me that that growth happens slow and growth is often hard to see. But the right conditions, whatever, produces that growth. And like little steps, you want to take big steps because you want to feel like there's a lot of progress, but little steps in the right direction is like, it's the move. Because if there's a cliff there, I'd rather put my toes off the edge of it than be looking back up at it,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that there's also to your plant analogy, there's also a talk about healthy growth. And, like
mm-hmm.
those plants look healthy to me. They're green. They're doing just fine, But if you're going to skip some steps, you might not be in a position where you can sustain the thing you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, specifically with the plant, if you try to pull on it or whatever, all you're doing is uprooting it.
Yeah, for sure. We're trying to like manufacture. It's like you put a bunch of fake lights in there and then remove the lights or take the plant into a different environment. It's not going to do well because it didn't learn to grow in the environment it's in, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's a really great picture of just, don't look at the results, look at the action, right? This is the point. Like,
yeah,
what's the next step I can take? And it's going to lead to something. Maybe we'll see it. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll come back in a year and go, man, that thing grew because of that sequence of actions.
Yeah, you can find the whole thing. So I remember our family was on a trip into the mountains up in Shenandoah National Park, and we're doing a hike. No, I lied. My family's on a trip in the Smoky Mountains, and the one day we were going to go to this waterfalls, the one day it got cold and rained, but we were there. We were leaving the next day, and it was like we're just gonna go. At the time, my daughter, who just turned 3, like a little while before, Hope was just barely 3, and on the way up, we were talking a lot about how much further to the waterfall, all this kind of stuff, and she was wet, and she didn't want to do it, and whatever. And so by focusing on the waterfall the entire time, everybody had a bad time. Just like a 3-year-old, she did it. She did so good. And then we got to the top. We got cool pictures of the waterfall. It was amazing. But on the way down, I just held her hand and we just started talking about the stuff that we were seeing. We started naming the stumps that had fallen down. We started asking them questions. We started wondering where we found one on the way up that on the way down she remembered, and she called it Mr. Tree. And we never found it on the way down, but she was telling me all about how he was going to lunch and getting, and because we were focused on the journey, on the way down. It was a significantly different experience on the way down. And it was so much fun. And like, as a guy who doesn't like to be cold, I don't like to be wet. I like the outdoors as much as it's when it's comfortable, but like, it's like, yeah, who likes to just be like soaking and wet and like with a 3-year-old who's also soaking and, but it was like, I would go back right now. And it was so fun because we were just there for that thing. And we got down to the bottom of the mountain and it was like, I mean, I'm glad to be done with that, but also like, I'm not like, I'm happy I went through that.
Mm-hmm.
And so all we ever do is look at the dream at the end, we're just always going to see how we're not there. And no progress is enough if all you're looking at is at the end.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
But don't dream small. Like I want to say dream big, act small. What is that? That was that thing. Think globally, act locally. Sponsored by whatever. EcoCorp. Dream big. Picture the life you want, whatever, and let it fuel your next steps. And don't dream about the house and the car and all that kind of stuff. That's getting to the top of the building and realizing your ladder was up against the wrong building. That's just well attested to. But start with the person you want to be. Think about the kind of people you want to have around you, the kind of life you want to live, and all of that stuff. Get into that headspace and dream really big. And then don't just dream big, start walking small or whatever. I said keep the dream big, but the steps small. I feel like that's
good.
That's the way.
Yeah.
You got any big dreams?
So many big dreams. I don't remember most of my dreams at night. We've already had a conversation.
What about coffee companies? Any big dreams about a coffee company?
Yeah, I got huge dreams about a coffee company. Neighborly Coffee.
So, which is actually like a really interesting thing. So Neighborly Coffee Company, we're both partners in. It's a local roaster to you in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We got a coffee truck out there slinging coffee. We're selling coffee to local businesses wholesale, but your and I part of that is the big dream in that is that the direct to consumer e-commerce, people can buy coffee via on a subscription. Really, we want people to buy coffee for their friends. And
yeah, but I think one of the things that's interesting to me about selling coffee on the internet, and specifically the way we're attempting to do it, is I think you and I have a dream to maybe like an ethos as a dream, like people we want to be, the kind of people that we want to be around, and in general, like we want to be generous people. We want to give things away. We want to give content away. We want to give time away. We want to give resources away. Whatever that looks like. We want to be generous people, and we want to be connected to people who are like that as well. And what I love about the dream of selling coffee on the internet is really it's a dream about an ethos. Like, can we be more neighborly, right?
Yeah.
The vehicle might be coffee, but the dream is that the world can become a little more neighborly as a result of this company. Defined by generosity, like buy one for yourself, but also we'll ship you a little 4-ounce bag, give it to a neighbor, give it to someone who would cherish that cup of coffee or what have you. Or better yet, just buy a box. Or the fact that, our info cards are built like postcards. Slap a stamp on that, write a note to your neighbor, fill the address in, and send it to them. They'll get a nice note. They'll get a recommendation for some good coffee. And how can we build? And so it's interesting that coffee just becomes a vehicle towards this other dream.
Yeah. And I think that's super interesting and important when you start to dream in a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of it being just sort of like, I want to make $1 billion online. It's like, yeah, that's kind of interesting, but that maybe is that's disconnected sort of from the rest of your person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we would do a better service to ourselves if we dreamed big in the direction of the rest of our person. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to put myself aside for this and whatever. I get to give myself wholly to this and believe in the thing that we're doing.
Right. Because I think if you get to the end of the road and we've built a business that is really really changing the way people relate to the people around them because of coffee, which sounds weird to some people listening to this probably. But that's probably a really big company that's taking in probably a really
Right.
a lot of money. That's probably really changed many people's lives financially who are involved in it locally here and however the thing grows and expands. But most people go, well, what can I make some bucks off of? And the money becomes the goal rather than and this is why we see so many people like they get to the end of that road and they have the things, they have the wealth, they have the cars, they have all of that, and they're like, what was the point of this? I lost so much along the way. And that's where like here's what we're talking about is we have this goal, make sure it's the right goal, the right dream,
Mm-hmm.
and the right things are attached to it, and then you're going to make missteps. And so those missteps shouldn't cost you the things that you the prices you don't want to pay, right? Family,
Right. Right.
relationships, your reputation, stuff like that. And so I
Yeah.
think like it matters so much what's at the end because the steps you take are in that direction.
Yeah. And who has energy for some, like, a big journey takes a ton of energy. It takes excitement. And there's going to be moments you don't feel excited about it. And so you still have to take that next step. And there's not, I think most people's dreams aren't, when they give up, it's because it's at some reason it's not aligned with, you know what I mean? That there's just a loss of energy or something for that. And so, I mean, that's definitely been true for me as we kind of try to figure out which thing to put a lot of energy into and how to, and kind of like starting things. That's a little interesting. That's a little interesting. That's a little interesting. But this neighborly thing has been like, well, that's actually very interesting. That's more aligned with who I am. I have a little more energy for that. I can squeeze it a little bit more. I can go a little deeper. You know, in the end of the fourth quarter, when we need to get that 2 more yards, I feel like I have that
Yeah.
for this, where, you know, that passion piece matters, and that's part of it. Cool. So, wrap up challenge here. What's one thing you'll take today? What's one action you can take today that you've been putting off towards a dream that means something to you?
It's a great question.
So, and that is enough for today. And you don't have to buy the website, build the website, get the online ads running by, by tonight. But let's think about buying the website, or making the phone call, building the flyer, whatever that thing is, or even if it's just like writing down that this is a dream. I think one of the hardest things for people to do is to say out loud, like, I care about this. This is something I would like to do, or a person I would like to be, whatever. And so you take that one action that you've been putting off. I think about, big and small. I've taught a lot of people to play guitar. When you get into playing guitar, 10 minutes, 30 minutes a day isn't necessarily better than 10 minutes a day at the beginning. You're not going to teach your fingers more in 30 minutes than you could in 10. But if you do minutes for 3 days in a row, that's like so much more than 30 minutes on one day. Just because when you come back to it, it's different, whatever. But like, I love that picture as I just got to take a small step today and a small step tomorrow and a small step. And that becomes exponential instead of trying to like chunk it all out sort of at once. So what's one action today you can take towards the thing you've been putting off, even if it's just writing it down and or saying out loud, I want this, or I want to do this. I think that takes courage.
Yeah, and you might be in very different phases of going after your dream, right? One of the reasons we're here is to help people with with the challenge that is small business, right? I think, a year ago, over a year ago, the three of us kind of said, right, let's go build a coffee company. And there's things
Yeah.
that nobody knows until you call it out, right? And then you start taking steps, right? And you start learning there's a lot more here to this in certain aspects. And here we are a year later, with an open website that no one knows about because
Yeah. We're just like, please
because
don't
we're
find
just
it.
testing the
Yeah.
processes, and getting ready to start pulling those levers. From there to here has been so many steps that I never would have known about because I think, and maybe what Caleb's asking today is just a really good practice for your everyday is to just ask the next question, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so what is one thing you can do today that you've been putting off? And then tomorrow, what is one thing I can do today? Or what is one question I can ask of this thing today to try and figure out what the next thing to do is, right? I think there's something to asking helpful and challenging questions even to ourselves, and maybe why haven't I done this? It might be a journey you don't want to go down, but take that next step and then figure out what in you is you're wrestling with that hasn't allowed you to do that, and let's overcome that so we can keep taking the next step and the next step and the next step.
Yeah.
It's scary to start a journey because you're calling out where you're going, right?
Yep.
You're putting yourself out.
I think it's a lot easier to live with, well, it's easier to live day to day if every time an arrow hits somewhere, you go draw a target around it. But it's so much more fulfilling when you hit where you shoot. Yeah.
Or miss the mark and realize you get another chance.
Yeah. Yeah. And at least you're honest. You're living in reality at that point, All right. So wrap up here. Big key points. Dream big. If you don't start, the journey never happens. And I really want people to understand that. Like, Ivan Battuta doesn't go 75,000 miles if he doesn't take one step. If he doesn't go to Mecca, he never gets to the next thing. And so, like, if you never start, it'll never happen. And every product you've ever seen, every company you've ever seen, every person that does a podcast or that stars in Broadway shows, they all had to do it. Like the difference between people who've done it and who haven't is that people who have done it have done it. There's a starting and there's a going. So if you don't start, the journey never happens. Point 2, keep the dream big and the steps small. Dream big, steps small. Lean into not knowing everything. We can't plan it. Like, we need a context for knowledge. I think in the information, like in the age where you can chat GPT anything, you can learn literally anything about anything. Lean into not knowing because all that knowledge needs context.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about the amount of information that's available, but it's not proving to be more useful for most people because most people aren't coming at it from the perspective of a practitioner. So get yourself into practitioner, then the knowledge is a big, big deal. So lean into not knowing everything. Dream big, keep the dreams big and the steps small, lean into not knowing everything. To me, that's a wrap. Go book a call on bookedlocal.com.
Let's go. We're here to help.
Amen.